Going to get started here. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining DataCon LA 2020. Welcome to the Business Intelligence Reporting and Use Cases track. And soon we'll be listening to the Tales of a German Building Diverse Teams Across All Time Zones session with Isabella Zaczek. I'm Ozzy Tarula, your host, and our host today is Davian Kwok. We will be moderating the chat and Q&A on the Wova app for you during the session. Today we have our guest, Isabella, and she will be talking about Tales of a German Building a Diverse Teams Across All Time Zones. Isabella believes that it takes an uncomfortable analysis and serious commitment to change to create legacy and greatness. Having worked for a Fortune 500 telecommunication company for 18 years in Europe and the USA, supporting over 250 global companies across 5 continents, Isabella believes that the global companies have made an art out of complicating global relationships and workflows. Certified in a variety of cutting-edge leadership and team performance tools, Isabella helps organizations untangle the complexities of people, processes, and metrics to create stronger bottom lines, more engaged employees, and customer devotion. Without further ado, I'll hand this over to the speaker. Thanks for being here, Isabella.
Thank you so much. Oh my God, I could have just listened to that. I was like, go on, you do the presentation for me. Hello, everyone. Thanks so much. Hello, my name is Isabella Zaczek, and I'm actually coming to you live and in color from Germany, because guess what? So many people did crazy things during this pandemic, and I just returned back to my homeland after 9 years in the US. So yes, we just passed midnight, and I'm super excited to be here with you. I'm gonna turn my video off now so we can just focus on the presentation. So let's start with it now. So, first of all, a huge thank you to DataCon LA and the entire team for this brilliant opportunity to spend time with y'all. So let's dive right into the topic of the hour. What does it mean to operate globally? When a company expands into a global market, there are the obvious external requirements, right? Such as rules and regulations, financials, competitors, and infrastructure. But what about your internal structure and organization? Think about that. How do you want to serve your global customers? How will you stand out against local competitors and gain market share? And do you know the complexity of a market? And is this complexity beyond your core capabilities, requiring you to remodel your existing operating model? It really becomes the question of what we see and what we assume, or what I call the cultural iceberg. I did copy that from the internet. I wish I would have come up with it myself. But what I also call it is the true drivers, values and motivators, as well as taboos, to understand the cultural makeup of everyone's team and the potential tripwires that could impact the team building and collaboration down the road. A lot of these underlying beliefs and assumptions are subconscious. Just think about it for a while and look at these various ideas given here. I can only advise you to take the time and make the effort to question these and the potential impact they could have on your team and on your customers in a specific market. So when I was given the opportunity to build a global customer operations team for our global accounts division, the team and I had to go through a number of questions, right? All through the eyes of our customers, obviously, their expectations and the market they operated in. So we looked at the 4 pillars that makes up a business foundation, starting with, there we are, strategy. Right? So what industries, what type of customers, headquarter locations, global spend, growth, potential, you name it. We then moved on to the setup of the organization. What support approach would make us actually unique and is expected in the industry? What functions should be merged to create a customer flow and loop? Repeatable, profitable, and satisfactory. So I'm a huge fan of not calling it a journey, but a loop, because you do want to replicate it. Thirdly, alignment. Cross-functionally, cross-culturally, and virtually, rules of engagement and communication with internal stakeholders, and clearly defined interfaces, handovers, and deliverables, especially when global or international is one of many customer segments you serve, and you need to create a special workflow. And who knew that, especially over the past 6 months, we have experienced exactly this. And last, but definitely not least, results. What do customers expect? Presenting findings to a small group of customers is what we chose because we valued their feedback, and asking them what is important to them and what KPIs they care for, to define efficient and smart KPIs. Because so often organizations with the best intent set up their own milestones, their own KPIs, but kind of miss the mark when it comes to customers. However, a strong and high-performing team culture is more than written policies and documents that live on websites and in handbooks, and I would hope you would agree with that. While going through all of these stages, my endeavor was to combine respect, leadership, guidance, empowerment, trust, and performance. So what I came up with is the 80-20 rule. Look at it because it's a bit of a twist on the Pareto principle, but what I believe with quite an impact. So my definition and application of the 80-20 rule is as follows. The 80% is the core guidance, the philosophy, message, goals, objectives you can add to it that apply to everyone in the team when working with each other and with customers being on the same page. Those are the 80%. The 20% is dedicated to regional distinctions, cultural rituals, and preferences and differences, right? Because here's what I believe, and there will always be differences, no matter what you do. It is human and it's cultural nature. The 20% was giving me the freedom to trust my global team across 5 continents to be self-sufficient and making decisions right on location, because they were the ones knowing their own culture and market best. Because here's what I believe. I believe that when you're operating globally, you will always be the guest in another country, no matter whether you manufacture, produce, deliver, and employ. Once a company understands this, respect, trust, and loyalty will start to grow with your customers in that market. My experience has always been that when you make an effort to get to know the culture and be curious about business, customs, and traditions, an almost instant rapport is created between the company, its employees, and customers. So now we have a bit of a tail timeout because it should not just be me rattling down numbers or theories, but also what it really means. So at one point in my life, at college to be exact, I was actually trilingual, German, English, and Spanish. Unfortunately, I did not keep up with my conversational Spanish. When the day came to support customers in Latin and South America, it became quite interesting, quite an experiment, because when I met with my customers in Argentina for the first time, I told them that while I can understand Spanish, I will not get my act together to reply in Spanish. What happened then was rather amazing. The customers almost immediately relaxed, provided feedback, and talked about business opportunities that I'm sure we would have not heard of otherwise. The reason here was simple, in my opinion. The customers deeply appreciated the effort we made, which in turn gave them the choice to speak in whatever language that was comfortable to them during our meetings. Ultimately, they went back and forth between Spanish and English. And here's the thing, which when we talk about data in general, what about we look at it not being about perfection? It was about cultural commitment. Commitment is the word here, and support. So in my 80-20 approach, to tie it back, imagine the 80% to be like The Sopranos, right? And a team and a message that were properly organized, fully dedicated, and high performing, based on the principle, we always do everything together. a band of consistency, which meant that my team and I were partners, and they knew that their questions and concerns were heard and valued, no matter whether they worked out of their home in Colombia, in a data center in Hong Kong, or in a small sales office in Dayton, Ohio. I cannot stress the importance of this partnership, this unity enough. It has the power to bring in any communication gaps and mitigate against any perceived advantages tied to specific regions. For example, thinking that you can only thrive or receive a promotion when you are at a headquarters or in a big corporate office. Global teams have an amazing potential to increase sales and productivity, foster innovation, and reach new markets. Access, above all, is key to reduce the risk of any regional or cultural silos. And don't get me wrong, please, there will always be silos by default. That is what the 20% is for. I hope this now comes together and makes sense. And what do I mean by access? I mean access to people, access to data, access to systems and technology, access to management and executives, and opportunities. This is essential to being part of a team and feeling integrated. This is what access and transparency are. So many cultures have their own way in doing things their way, and at times, just because we're used to our way, it will not appear to make any sense to us, or it will not fit into our way of doing business. This is what being vulnerable actually means. For me, all I say is accept it and find a way to turn this into an opportunity for you to gain a different business perspective. But there are ways to reduce the strain that cultural differences and assumptions can cause on relationships. So here are a couple of suggestions that worked for me and some that I would have loved to invest more time in during my time in corporate. Unorthodoxy, systems, alignments, and connection. So what do I mean by that? Be unorthodox and be outside of your culture zone. Unorthodox and diverse leadership appointments from a cultural perspective, for example. Diversity is all the rage, and it couldn't be more important, especially now for global management and leadership. Wouldn't you want the setup of your global leadership to actually be global with various nationalities and language capabilities? I mean, you want to cover a wide range of markets and demands, right? And provide job developments and promotions no matter what region to mitigate those perceived advantages tied to specific regions. We then move to systems, right? Top-notch and robust systems. We're at a conference where we talk about data, but it's so important to have functioning CRMs, video conferencing that allow effortless interaction. We are all experiencing this right now. We can't just completely take it off the shelf, but we also cannot put 50 shades of whatever flavor into them. Structures, processes, systems are key to a seamless collaboration and productivity, especially when global or international coexist with other channels, for example, such as domestic or government. Next suggestion would be alignment. Clear role mandates and responsibilities, especially when you have a multinational team supporting one customer. Transparent rules of engagement. I cannot stress this one enough because points of contact and subject matter expert in regions, especially for after hours and holidays, we take so much for granted calling ourselves global. And then we're surprised when we face certain obstacles we could have all thought about, whether it's a time difference or any holidays, especially with the season now coming up. And what is absolutely priceless and should be mandatory, in my opinion, trainings on cultural context, rituals, sensitivities. It should be company-wide and especially for global leaders, as I can bet we could all share rather should I say, embarrassing examples on the lack of cultural sensitivities. And the last suggestion I would put in is connection. What about exchange programs between regions, not only on the management level to provide exposure, especially for regions that are so decentralized and out in no man's land? Travel budgets for team meetings at least once a year. Fine, we are facing new requirements. What does new work look like? But what can we do, right? It's now the time to think about how can we bring people still together? We are all watching our budgets and want lean organizations without operational costs going through the roof. But you cannot replace the value and greatness that happens when leaders that are scattered across many regions come together to define initiatives and work on strategic development and get to know each other. And I've seen that happening in extrovert jobs as well as in introvert jobs. It really is about the connection. It's about spending time with your team, not just in meetings or on the phone, but in the trenches. This does not mean micromanagement, okay? I'm talking about caring by not losing touch with what is happening in the trenches, in the field. And then there are the daily things in life. Don't forget about those daily things. As trivial as they might seem, they have a huge impact on your employees and your customers. For example, I mentioned it just a minute ago, time zones are opportunities. Please respect them as well as regional hours of business and be specific when scheduling meetings. The DataCon LA team has done a brilliant job to communicate, to make sure everything's working. The app was amazing. Me being in Germany, especially with Germany having changed their time, this Sunday morning, it was seamless. It's just such a great example on how you can help each other. Flexibility as well as clear communication, instructions, boundaries, and limitations are key to build a successful culture of cultures. Good times, great stories, and even greater lessons learned. Again, I'm sure we can all share so many stories about that. So before we actually go to this one, and I think I messed up a bit and forgot a slide, but let me share a quote by Paulo Coelho with you, who beautifully summarizes everything I'm so passionate about. So Paulo Coelho said, culture makes people understand each other better. And if they understand each other better in their soul, it is easier to overcome the economic and political barriers. But first, they have to understand that their neighbors is, in the end, just like them, with the same problems, the same questions. I love that quote. And just ping me, I will put the quote actually also on the app. It's just such a brilliant one. And now, before we part, if you're at odds what market to explore next, here is a map I found on the Google machine, as I call it, showing you where the happiest, the least happy, and fastest growing markets are. I'm happy to say that thanks to my living in Germany, Scotland, Ireland, and in the US, I'm a solid, grounded, and happy 7. So, see, you all thought the word happy in German does not fit into one sentence. So that was my bit of a, attempt at a joke here at the end. But thank you so much for spending your precious time with me and the fabulous DataCon LA team today. You are so appreciated. And if you have any questions, please ask me now, ping me on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'll put my video on at Isabella Zaczek. It's my name, and just ping me. More than happy to continue the conversation and answer any questions you might have.
Thank you so much, Isabella. That was an excellent presentation. And glad to hear that you are in line with a lot of things that usually, I would say, regular team members are wanting, such as, you know, you mentioned trust, loyalty. For me, a lot of the times, without that, we can't fully be our full potential if we're not trusted with that, if we don't have that loyalty. So I'm glad to hear that that you're in line with that. One question I did have is, what do you recommend? I know you mentioned when you met with team in Argentina, you understood Spanish, so that helped you open up the doors there with communication. What do you recommend with other countries that you don't necessarily are familiar with their language? Do you bring someone in that is familiar with both languages? What do you recommend in that case?
Love that question, because what I was able to do to a high degree, not 100%, let's not kid ourselves, but I made sure I hired people with language capabilities. I always believed I can teach systems. Fine, you have to have an affinity for systems because you deal with them daily. So if you like more customer contact, it might not be for you. But when I found the people, for me, it was important that I can serve 70 to 80% of the languages we had, right, within our customers. And when you really, really put your head to it, it's not that much, right? And you meet a lot of customers. I've made that experience in Asia who actually prefer to speak in English, right? Although we had people in Hong Kong, I had a Mandarin Chinese speaker in my team. But it worked. I think there's just a lot of fear linked to truly building a culturally diverse team, because everyone has different preferences. I thought it was always very beautiful because I learned more than I read in books, but it also really required me to face things I didn't know. But yes, to your point, back then when I led a customer operations team in Europe, and I was responsible for Europe, the Middle East, East Europe, our team really served 90% of the languages. We had an Arab speaking, like 2 Arab speaking, we had Portuguese, Dutch, Spanish, Polish, Russian, and we were a team of 10. Right?
That's incredible. And I thought you were going to say, 20, 30 people, at least 2 languages each.
No, because I think when you really find people that bring so much to the table, oh my God, let's go back to finding the people. I mean, they're everywhere, right? And it takes commitment. It takes long hours at night to bridge time zones. But once you have a system working, and we're talking about data, we're talking about systems. I'm a nerd. And yes, you can still humanize it. You can still bring data and human together. And I just wish we would put more effort into it, use more data, because it would prove over and over again that there is a human side to it.
Yeah, the biggest point one of the biggest points that resonated with me today is the language barrier. I was joined a partner that was working with a team in Latin America, and I speak Spanish. He didn't, and he had been working with his team for about a year. And they do speak English, but since our first meeting in the evening, when I started speaking Spanish to them, it's like I felt the relief on their end, and I felt the relief on my partner's end, because it was like, okay, now we can move forward. And it's amazing that again, just letting them know that you're touching on their culture, that you're right there with them, helped us move a lot faster, a lot smoother. Which leads to my other question is, how do you find key members? You mentioned you had a team of 10 creating and completing incredible things. What's your take on finding the right people to build these international global teams? What is the sauce? What is the glue that you think that you look for, that you hear something that, what is that, if you can expand on that?
So that might surprise many people when I say that, because I've done, oh my God, so many certifications, but that's the least thing I'm looking for. It's a lot to do with your gut. I think we all need a bit of a gut cleansing. And again, I think it's a lot fear-based. Oh my God, I don't want to, hire someone that doesn't work out, right? In 3 or 6 months. And we hear the numbers, the dollars linked to wrong hires. I don't actually think it's necessarily the hires, but what you do with them. And for me, I wanted a culturally diverse team. And I didn't just want it on paper. I wanted it in human flesh, so to speak. And yes, perhaps I was lucky enough to have an HR team that couldn't care less, meaning they had other things to do. So I took hiring in my own hands. I'm, thinking about it, I'm super happy about it now. But it takes a lot of determination. And it took me many nights back then. Oh my God, we didn't have, I know that sounds so old now, but we didn't have LinkedIn, right? Like this huge access to what we have now. And what I would want everyone, again, bringing it back to data, I would love for more people to actually say what languages they speak, right? They put their, masters and, their bachelors and, I've done this and that. It certainly is important, but I am not seeing like a lot of sharing about truly cultural, attributes. People don't really say that. I mean, I encourage my team, go and take language courses, at least basic ones. Companies weren't even prepared for that. They're like, ooh, where do we go? Do we find a private tutor too? Do we do that? Again, just I want people to say more, right? Not just, I mean, English is a lovely language. We can all speak it. It's a common denominator for us to exchange, to have conferences with different cultures, but do not forget the roots and where you're coming from and be proud of your language. And I think we would need so much more of that. And again, for me, it was in the end, as corny as it might sound, it was a lot of gut feel.
Yeah, that's very fair. I always, a lot of things like trust. Of course, you can have data to back up, someone's project, but a lot of the time, I think is if you trust that person to come through with their end of the deal, the end of the task, it goes a long way. Do you have any feedback? I know companies are looking at the market from a global perspective now, right? But what about the other way around? A lot of us don't apply to positions in Germany. We'll apply to positions only in the U.S., maybe Canada. But what do you recommend to all of us who are, international driven to look for, jobs in Germany, jobs in Taiwan or Australia? How do you, what is your recommendation? What is your advice on someone to expand their kind of like their search?
I won't lie, because I do believe while we are so connected and so global, it's become rather difficult. I think the pandemic has just put another nail into a coffin that has been built for a longer time, right? Certain countries have been designated to just do call centers, which is, in my opinion, such a wrong model, because you just put them all into one bucket, which it's not about. It takes a lot of determination. I'm happy that I did my travels, like I studied in Scotland, then I worked in Ireland, I moved, to the US. I felt it was easier. It was easier to venture out, but now it's a lot of bureaucratics. Find a company, if you do have, the endeavor to work globally, you need to find a global company first. And very early on, find out how the company is doing international exchange programs, how the company is transferring employees. For example, when I moved to the US for the company I worked for, I was the first German. I was the first one from the continent back then to work for the company. I've already had worked for the company for 11 years in Europe. They asked me to come to the US. At that point, it was unheard of, because it was only people from the UK moving over there. Everyone was like, oh my Lord. Shortly after me, like, a French colleague moved over as well, but find a company that suits your needs if you want to work globally. it's very hard to just say, you know, we see it all in those programs like, oh, just pack your suitcase and go into a company and try it there. It's just so much bureaucracy to get a visa. It's tough. And I'm telling you, even with me transferring for a company, oh my God, it came down to the wire with my visa, with my green card. It took years. It took years before I got that. It's just, while it all sounds, you know, super exciting, also do your homework. Mm-hmm. It sounds exciting to go into a different country, but oh boy, the things I've learned in my 9 years, although I would have thought, Germany, the US, is there such a big difference? I learned my lessons. But if you're really keen on it, find a company that does it. It needs to be a global company. Do your homework, and then it's a lot of determination.
All right, well, thank you. That is very insightful. We thank you for your time. Thank you, Isabella Zaczek, for your presentation, and I appreciate all the attendees for the questions and interactions during this session. Please contact the speaker if you have any further questions regarding this topic. Please provide your comment and feedback to us or the organizers on the community board, or start a discussion there to connect with others in the DataCon LA 2020 community. Thank you for joining today's presentation. I hope you can gain some insights from this session. Have a wonderful day, and thank you for being part of this year's DataCon LA. Thank you, Isabella. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.